Hello. Good morning, everyone. Beautiful to see everyone on this morning. Okay. Oh, Myra, would I be able to share a screen?
Yes, you should be able to.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Just wondering that everyone sees me as well as what I'm sharing. Yeah?
No, I can't see you.
Do you see the what I'm sharing on my screen?
Yes, Hindy
Yeah.
is showing up.
Is
Yes.
this the way to do it?
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, but you can't see me, right?
Right.
Right.
Is there a way to
If
do
you
the
turn your camera
slideshow?
back on, we can see you and the presentation.
How about now? Does now
Do
work?
what you did before. Now I see your whole computer.
I see the screen, but I don't see you. It's Maxine Crandall.
Is there a way to do both or no?
Yes.
Okay. So
You have your camera off. That's why it's not showing.
oh, I have my camera off.
Make sure your video is going.
Here, let me go. Stop share. Okay. Oh, there we go. Start video.
Yeah, there you go. You're good now.
Okay.
Oh, there you are.
Amazing.
There you are. Okay.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, so we'll start in 2 seconds. I'm gonna share the screen. Curious if everyone sees me now and the slideshow that I'm putting up.
Now
Me
you
and the slideshow?
You just disappeared
you
again.
disappeared now. You're no longer in sight.
Right.
Okay. So we'll do it like this. Now you see me and my screen, correct?
Not yet.
I don't see you. I see the screen, but I don't see you.
Okay, so I guess what we're gonna do is we'll just
Just start your video and you're fine.
yeah,
Yeah. When you went on full screen, it took off your video.
start my video.
There you go. Okay.
Okay, now I see you.
All right. Sorry, thanks everyone for bearing with the technical things. Okay, so everyone sees me, but do you see this? You don't see the slideshow, right?
Right.
Click on your PowerPoint because you have a black Zoom screen in front of it. So just click on your PowerPoint, your presentation. There you go. Now you're good.
Okay, now we're good.
Perfect. That's exactly it.
Amazing. Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good morning. We're going to be continuing the class on Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our fathers. And today we're going into chapter 5. Now, chapter 5 is really interesting because a lot of the other chapters talk about different sayings that rabbis said, different quotes to live by. But chapter 5, all of the ethics or all of the morals that the sages are trying to teach us are brought about through examples connected to numbers. So first, the sages talk about morals and values connected to the number 10, and then the number 7, and then the number 4, and then the number 3. And there's various different mishnahs, which is different verses that are connected to different numbers. And we're going to be approaching one of the mishnahs that speaks about the number 10. Now, 10 in Judaism represents completion. In Kabbalistic terms, number 10 is a special number because the 10 sfirot, 10 divine attributes that God used to create the world, represents that God completed the world when he made it. And then the number 7 is also significant in Judaism, as is the number 4 and 3. But today we're going to be talking about a specific mishnah that's connected to the number 10. And I'm very excited to share this one with you all because I was very excited when I came upon it and I was learning it. And I think it's a very relevant mishnah and it teaches us a little bit of history. So here we go. So the mishnah is the third mishnah in chapter 5. And it says that with 10 tests, our father Avraham was tested and he withstood them all. Why and how? In order to make known how great was our father Avraham's love for God. So about him, and his life story is an example for us. Now, Avraham was tested by God with 10 tests, and we could also call them challenges. They were 10 challenging occurrences that happened in Avraham's life. And from Avraham, his potential, because Avraham had a great potential, and throughout Avraham's life, his character develops more, and he develops into an example of the father of the Jewish people. And with all of these challenges that God puts in front of Avraham passes them, and he shows his devotion to God with every single challenge that he passes. Now, it's interesting. In the Mishnah, it says, our father Avraham. And it says it twice. The reason is because when we're talking about the relationship between parents and children take great pride in the accomplishments that their fathers and mothers do. When your father and your mother has done something great in life, you wear it like a badge of honor because children and parents are inherently connected at their core, and the traits of parents come through into their children. So we're very proud of our parents' accomplishments, and at the same time, we try to carry on our parents' accomplishments to the next generation. So when it says our father Avraham twice, the Mishnah is trying to teach us that just like Avraham had 10 challenges in his life, and he passed them all with flying colors, and he passed them all showing how much love he had for God, and Avraham became stronger in the process. Same thing with us. In life, we are challenged in parallel ways to the way that Avraham, our forefather, was challenged. And we have the ability, just like our father Avraham, to pass through our challenges with fortitude and resilience, and to come out on the other side with a greater love and a greater connection to God. So that's why it says our father Avraham twice. Usually in Jewish texts, when something is repeated twice, it means that there's some sort of important lesson that we need to learn. So from our father Avraham, we wear our father Avraham's legacy and name like a badge of pride. So today what we're going to do is we're going to go into the 10 tests of our father Avraham, and we're going to see how these 10 tests come up in our lives. And there are 10 ways that we are challenged throughout our lives. So as we go 10 tests, we will also narrate the story of Avraham, which is a very fascinating story. So, Avraham's first test is his early childhood. Avraham was born in Mesopotamia, and just the Fertile Crescent, that kind of era. And Avraham's father was actually a dignitary. And the night that Avraham was born, the king, whose name was King Nimrod, his advisors told him, that person that works in your palace, that dignitary, whose name was Terach, Avram's father's name was Terach, he has a son that was just born tonight, and this son is going to threaten and challenge your throne. Nimrod becomes very nervous, and in those days, they very much believed and relied heavily on stargazers. And Nimrod tells Avram's father, bring me your baby. And he's planning to kill the baby Avraham. Terach goes, he takes his servant's baby instead. And he goes and he takes his wife and his newborn baby Avraham, and he puts them and he hides them away. And Avraham actually grew up hidden. His whole childhood, he grew up hidden from the limelight. He had to escape for his life. And eventually, when Avraham was a child and he was living in nature, and he was living with his mother and his nurse, in nature secluded, away from civilization, he learned and he discovered that there's one God, that there's no way that nature dictates the way the universe runs, which is what idolatrous people at the time thought. The idolatrous people at the time worshiped the sun, they worshiped the water, but Avraham in nature realized that the sun and the water, they do not sustain everything. There must be a higher force that sustains everything, is all inclusive. So Avraham's childhood was quite tumultuous, and in the way that we interact with our children, very, very young, is the way that they'll grow up to be in adulthood. They'll be able, their strengths, they'll be able to have their confidence. Now, that's why it's very important that we protect children from negative influences, because children are very, very impressionable. And at the same time, no parent is perfect. No home is perfect. Every child is always going to grow up with a chip on their shoulder. And we grow up with the chip on our shoulder into adulthood. And how do we continue from our past? It's very important to not hold on to negativity from childhood, because it could be very easy. Childhood memories that we have when we're children, are very, very deep within us. And the first release hurt that we had in our childhood, any sort of hurt, and you know what, maybe it didn't even come from the home, maybe it came from school, maybe it came from peers. There's always something that we grow up with that is connected to from when we're a child that we need to release ourselves from. And the challenge of releasing yourself from any hurt and any pain that you had in your childhood is the first challenge that is connected to Avraham's first test. Avraham's first test was that he was a child that was brought up in a very idolatrous environment. He had to be hidden from a king, quite traumatic. And Avraham got past that and was able to overcome that challenge. So that's the first challenge of Avraham. The second challenge of Avraham. So eventually Avraham gets older, and the threat of kingdom, he lives in his parents' house, and he starts to work for his father. Now, there's different interpretations, but basically his father was either a priest or an idol shop owner. And his father represented bringing idols to the masses. And Avraham defied his father. One day, he's in a place with tons of idols. They all belong to his father. And Avraham smashes all these idols. And he's very young. His father comes home and sees idols all over the floor and says, Avraham, what is going on here? What did you do? Avram said, no, what did I do? I didn't do anything. This idol, this big idol, started up with this little idol, and they started fighting. And then all of a sudden, any idol that came into their way was broken. And Avram's father says, Avram, you know that idols can't fight each other. You must have done it. And Avram said, if idols can't move, if they're not mobile, if they can't do anything, why do you worship them? And Avram's father was floored. No one had ever thought like that theory up to be spoken about. Because it was just the way of life. Everyone worships idols. There's still civilizations that worship idols. I remember when I went to Thailand, I remember in the streets of Bangkok, there were different like idols set up on the street, and I watched this person who was walking to work. He was wearing a suit. He was holding a briefcase. He stopped in front of the idol. He bowed down, and then he continued on his way. This was what was normal, and this was what was natural. And the fact that Avraham was causing such like a disruption to the way people into fiery furnace.
You're not
Furnace.
It's hard to
Avraham
hear
actually
you.
survived. And
Can you hear me?
out of the furnace in our lives. Yes, I can hear you. I'm going to speak louder. Does that help if I speak louder?
It's also your bandwidth. It has to do with your Wi-Fi strength.
Yeah, it's what she said is it's hard to hear you.
It's jumpy a little. Are you on Wi-Fi or your phone?
I'm on data.
Can you go on Wi-Fi?
No, I don't have Wi-Fi right now. Let me see if I can move somewhere. How about now? Does it work now better?
Yes.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. A little bit, okay. I'm gonna get a chair, hold on. Yeah. Okay. Does it work now? Is now good?
Yes, better.
Okay. So the next thing that happens to Avram about him being thrown into a fiery furnace is in our lives a challenge of commitment to values. So Avram was challenged. He held very, very strong to his values. And the fiery furnace in our life is a metaphor for the choice that we have to either conform and be like everyone else and do what everyone else is doing and follow the path that everyone else is doing, or to make a stand for what we know is right, and or make a stand for believing in our values. Now, these examples that I'm giving are very vague, and I'm sure that everyone can think about a time in their life when everyone was doing and believing and thinking one way, but your intuition and your faith told you to believe otherwise. And it wasn't easy, but you decided to commit to your values and to what you know is true. And in a modern example, idolatry can be the materialism that we are very exposed to today, that we are very that we are very much surrounded by. And that choice to step back from what is being fed to us, the materialism or the idolatry of today's time, and to hold strong to our values and to come out unscathed. So when Avraham came out of the fiery furnace, he continued his mission, and he said, you know what? Now I know my mission statement in life. My mission statement in life is to spread awareness about one God. And in very small ways, we do that as well. Whenever we choose our values over conforming, we always send a message across of what's right and what's good, and we make impressions on people. Now, the third challenge of Avraham was the challenge of Lech Lecha, leaving a home to build a new life. Now, when I was a kid in third grade and we were learning the story of Avraham, the way the teacher opened up the class was very memorable. She turned to me and she said, Hindy, go. And I said, where? Go where? And she said, go. I'm like, what? I was so confused. And she was like, exactly. You're so confused. That's what Avraham was like when God told him, go. Now, Avraham had been living and he got married. He was influencing a lot of people. He had a whole community of people that he was teaching about God. And then God tells Avraham, go. Just pick up from the home that you worked so hard to build and move to a new place. And where is this new place going to be? It's going to be the land of Israel. Now, Avraham doesn't really have any instructions. He doesn't really have any vision, any long-term plans. He is told by God to just go and to have faith that he'll be able to build a new life somewhere else. And that's what Avraham does. He does it with complete faith and with joy. All of these things Avraham does with joy and with resilience. Now, all of us in our life, we have the challenge of change. It could be from either a location or a societal change or some sort of other, we all experience change in our life. Change is when we have a comfort zone and we have to move to a new place or a new situation. And this idea of moving to a new place is to see what we're capable of, to see, okay, what can we do now that's different than before? Because when we get in our comfort zones, we like to stay there and we like to remain sedentary. But moving to a new place or coming to a new process of change is very important for our development and for our growth. It's a very big challenge, but we go through this challenge knowing that we're going to come to the other side in a proper way and in a way that like shows more of our skills. So we're all used to the comfort zones of our home environment, and it could be a physical home environment, or it could just be something that we're familiar with, like a work environment or a social environment. And we have things that we're used to. And when we're forced to change, that's when we can really see the unique contribution that we bring. Now, change is very, very hard and difficult. Right now, my husband and I are setting up our new apartment, and we've been living in Israel for 2 years. And last night, as we were setting up, I was telling my husband, I feel like we're newly married. Even though we've been married for 2 years, I feel like we're very newly married because we're literally starting from scratch. And starting from scratch is something that most people do throughout their life in different capacities. But the goal of starting from scratch is that we're going to get to the other side and we're going to be able to bring forth something new, and this change is going to be good. There's a Hebrew phrase actually, mishaneh makom, mishaneh mazal. When you change your place, you change your mazel. Your mazel becomes better. And it doesn't just mean a physical place. It doesn't only mean moving into a new home. It means a space. It means when you're changing and you're coming out of one comfort zone to go to a new comfort zone or to build a new comfort zone, that is good for your mazel. And it's also good for your inner strengths. So this was a challenge that Avraham had, that all of us have in our life, throughout our lives. And we learn how to do this challenge from Avraham. Avraham had it with such faith. God told him to go, and Avraham went. He wasn't cynical about it. He wasn't upset. He just went forth and he just decided to go for it. Now the next challenge, this is very hard. So it's amazing when we change and we move to a new location and everything is working out. But what if it doesn't work out? What if we leave our comfort zone to come to a new place in order for things to be better and it isn't? It only gets worse. So that's exactly what happened to Avraham. Avraham comes to the land of Israel. He's promised all these flowery things from God about the land of Israel. And he arrives to a famine. And a famine was a very, very real problem in those days. In today's day and age, we don't understand the concept of famine, thank God, because we have supermarkets full of food and we have exports and we have just technology. But in those days, if the land did not bring forth food, people would actually starve. And Avraham doesn't know what to do. And then he decides he's going to temporarily move to the land of Egypt. Even though this is going to be a huge downgrade than what was promised to him, he decides to unfortunately have to move again. And hunger, the challenge of hunger in our lives is a void or need that is unfulfilled. The challenge of having something in our life where we need to fill the void, we need to have completion, but we're having a hard time getting to it. And it could also be an example of when we make choices in our life, like Avraham, we make choices that we hope will be for the better, and unfortunately, they do not bear fruits. And we're, instead of remaining stuck and saying, oh no, I made so much change in my life in order to get to a good place and it's not good, it's negative, we have to ask ourselves, like Avraham, okay, can I realize that I have to make another move in order for things to be better? And it's going to take more strength and it might drain me, but just like Avraham picked up after hardship, he was promised something good. He came, it wasn't good, and he has to move on. All of us have that ability from Avraham to do that because it happens in life. It's not that everything is planned out perfectly, that, oh, when we go through a hard time, we'll come back out on the other side, everything's going to be amazing. There will always be subsequent challenges to every problem that we are going to have to deal with. And small challenges, but we can do it. We can get to the other side and we bring up this strength. We bring it up from the example of Avraham. Now, what happens, unfortunately, after that is that Avraham comes to the land of Egypt and his wife Sarah is extremely beautiful. And Avraham decides he's going to hide Sarah. He hides her from anyone's gaze, but the Egyptians see her and they all say, wow, this woman is so beautiful. She is fit for a king. And they take her and they bring her to Pharaoh. Pharaoh tries to abduct her, tries to hurt her and harm her. And God makes a miracle and the house of Pharaoh is plagued. And Pharaoh realizes that that the plague is coming because he's trying to be with a married woman. And he returns Sarah to Avraham and he apologizes. But for the time being, that's a very, very difficult challenge for Avraham to have his wife kidnapped from him. And in our life, it represents the challenge that we have in our relationships. All of us in our relationships, we aim for it to always be beautiful, to always be peaceful, but sometimes there is something externally that will hijack, quote unquote, the relationship. And hijack, just like Pharaoh hijacked Sarah from Avraham, there are either external or internal pressures that could hurt or damage the relationship. But the challenge that we all face in our relationships is to still maintain our relationship and to keep them whole and healthy and to bring goodness to our relationships, even when times are tough. And we learn this from Avraham. And when we have challenges in our relationship, to ask ourselves, is this going to break us? Or can we get to the other side together as a couple and do what Avraham did and eventually be reunited with Sarah? Okay, the sixth test of Avraham was that Avraham had a nephew. This nephew lived in an area that was tumultuous and the kings of the area were going to war against each other. And Avraham was afraid about his nephew's situation. He knew that his nephew was going to be caught up in this war. Again, war is something that was very terrible and real in those days. If you lived in a country that was at war, your life was at stake. And Avraham went to go save his nephew. Now, in going to save his nephew, he joined the war effort, and there was a battle against 4 kings of a region and 5 kings of a region. Avraham joined the side with the 5 kings, the side where his nephew Lot was living in, and Avraham himself personally engaged in a battle in order to not only save his nephew, but to save the people of the area. Now, in our life, the example of war can be the example of any sort of confrontation that we have in our life. Because what is war? War is one country that is making problems against another nation. And they say, okay, we want to impose on another nation. And sometimes we get imposed on by different confrontations in our life. And there's battles from the outside, there's battles from the inside. In life, there are battles that we have to wage. Now, just like Avraham fought these battles with strength, Avraham fought these battles with vision and efficiency. Avraham was a very efficient warrior, and Avraham was the kind of warrior that stood up to what was right. He went to war. His only intention for going to war was to save his nephew and the people that lived there. We can all have the strength that Avraham had, and the wars in our life do not have to deplete us. We can keep our eyes on the goal and say, why are we fighting these wars in the first place? They're in order to strengthen us, and we can engage in the battles in our life with a vision that we're going to come out on the other side stronger, and that's why we're fighting these battles. Now, there's also a saying in life, choose your battles. There's not every single battle that we have to choose to fight, because there are going to be times where we say, you know what, I don't want to fight this battle. But if it's for the purpose of strengthening ourselves or for the purpose of bringing goodness to somebody else, then it is important. And now we have the 7th test of Avraham. Now, Avraham is always in conversation with God, and God comes to Avraham, and Avraham does not have any children after a very, very long time. And God says to Avraham, I'm going to promise you children, and these children are going to be great. They're going to be numerous. And God proceeds to tell Avraham the story of the Jewish people, of what's going to happen to the Jewish people. And unfortunately, God tells Avraham, your children are going to eventually move down to Egypt. They're going to be strangers in a strange land, and they're going to be a nation that will be subjugated to other different nations and countries and other different kings. And unfortunately, there will be a long period of exile for your children. And Avraham is very pained, because on one hand, God is offering him the land of Israel. He's offering him that his children are going to be special. But at the same time, Avraham is understanding from what God's word is that we are going to be a nation that unfortunately will suffer throughout the course of history. And this challenge in our life is the challenge of, unfortunately, sometimes experiencing some sort of suffering or pain or loss or hard times. Now, Avraham, this was a challenge for Avraham, because it's very, very painful to hear negative things that are going to be affecting your family. But at the same time, Avraham got past this challenge, and he responds to God that he is willing to be the special nation that God chooses. And throughout our lives, if we are experiencing hard times, there are inner resources that we are able to draw within ourselves in order to get past that, and to say, you know what, this is a very, very difficult time, but I can do it. I could do hard things. I could stand up to the challenge. Sometimes when you speak to children, I learned this from my aunt. My aunt told me that she went to a child education class. And when children are facing difficulty or challenges, and they say, I can't, it's too hard. I can't do this, it's too hard. You say to the child, yes, it is hard. You validate that it is very difficult, but then you say to the child, but you can do hard things, right? And I've tried this on my siblings, And I do this to myself all the time. If there's something hard, I say to myself, but you can do hard things. And this resilience comes from Avraham, our forefather. We looked like for an example of how resilient he was. Now, the next challenge is the challenge of circumcision. Avraham is told to circumcise himself and his descendants at age 99. And circumcision spiritually represents completion. It represents sanctifying yourself physically to God, listening to what God says. And circumcision, quote unquote, in our life, the challenge of circumcision could be the challenge of transformation, of how do we impart Judaism to the next generation? How do we make ourselves a vessel of saying, we are going to follow what God says. We are going to be committed to Judaism. We are going to be committed to what the Torah says, and we want to follow what the Torah says. It's not easy. It's not simple. Living a spiritual life and living a life that is connected to the divine, connected to Torah, is not smooth. It's something that we have to work on. It doesn't always come natural or easy, but it's a challenge that all of us are able to do because we're Jewish, and God would not give us things that we can't, give us mitzvot, give us commandments that we cannot do. And the goal of all the mitzvot are to refine us and to make a connection with God. And that's what Avraham focused on. Avraham said, okay, wow, this is a big deal. Being circumcised at age 99 is no simple task. But I want to show adherence to God. I want to be connected to God. And when we do a mitzvah, when the mitzvah is difficult or when the mitzvah is challenging, what we try to tell ourselves is, but I want to be connected to God, and I want to do this because even though it is hard, it's going to get easier, and I want to be connected to God. And every single person, every single Jew wants to do what God says, even if it's challenging, even if it's difficult for him. And this challenge of transformation, doing the mitzvah and then reaping the rewards from the mitzvah and saying, oh, wow, that was very, very beautiful. For some people, that could be Shabbat. Shabbat could be very hard for people. But after keeping Shabbat, and especially over time, and seeing the beauty that Shabbat brings to our lives, we say, okay, I went through a process of transformation. I chose Shabbat because of commitment to God, but at the same time, I experienced a transformation that was very positive. Now, the ninth challenge of Avraham was that Avraham, besides for Sarah and Isaac, had another wife named Hagar, and their son was Yishmael. Now, Yishmael is the father of the Arab nations, and Yishmael was a very bad influence on Yitzchak, and he was a lot older than Yitzchak. And eventually Sarah said to Avraham, I don't like the fact that my son Yitzchak is growing up next to Yishmael. I need them to be separate. I need you to send Hagar and Yishmael away. Now, Avraham was a very, very kind person. This was somebody who opened his home to everyone, always had lots of guests. He epitomized chesed. And for Avraham to send away a wife and child was unimaginable. He was really broken from the thought of doing it. And God tells him, you have to listen to what your wife Sarah says. And she's not saying this because she hates Hagar. She's not saying this because she hates Yishmael. She's saying this because she's trying to protect her son Isaac, and this is what is necessary now. And there are sometimes in life where we want everything just to be good and to flow and to be great. But in order for things to be good in life, there has to be boundaries. And sometimes putting up boundaries is very, very difficult. And this in our life is the challenge of discipline. We all have a hard time putting up boundaries, disciplining, and we feel like if we discipline, we're going to be losing something. But on the contrary, when we put up a boundary, it's only to create something, in order to make something grow. Like a garden, think about cultivating a garden. We put up a fence around the garden to protect the garden from either people that will stomp on the garden or dogs or anyone that will come and hurt the garden. But why do we have to put a fence? Why can't we just let the flowers just grow anywhere they want, or let the vegetables and fruit just grow? We need to have boundaries in order to maintain what's precious and what's important. And in life, there are different places where we ask ourselves, where do we have to put up boundaries? Even if it's hard, even if it's difficult, how do we remain disciplined? And for a lot of us, being disciplined is not our nature. One of the best examples we can think about is teachers in a classroom. A teacher wants to come in and be the good teacher. They want to be the likable teacher. They want all the kids to just gravitate towards them. But the way that happens is through discipline. Children that don't experience discipline in their life don't feel secure. When a child is in a classroom where the teacher is maintaining boundaries and discipline, then the child knows, okay, now I can really develop a relationship with this child. And that's usually the process that happens to most teachers. The beginning of the school year is full of discipline. The teacher is setting up herself or himself for a good year. And in order to do that, you need to maintain boundaries and discipline. And once the children get that message, then after that, the teacher's relationship of love and care and acceptance can come forth. And now the final test of Avraham was the biggest one, was the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. Now the binding of Isaac's story is very perplexing, and it is something that has a lot of depth and layers. And this was the final test of Avraham. It defied all reason. Why would God ask him to sacrifice a son that he just gave him after so many years of waiting? And eventually Avraham stopped. But what happens is that God tells Avraham to do this, and Avraham does it like a soldier. And Avraham does this in order to be connected to God and to do what God says. And he says, I'm on show full commitment and full devotion to God. Now, in our life, this is when we are asked to sacrifice something in our life for the sake of God. And Hasidic Jewish mysticism or Hasidic thought talks about how, thank God, in our life today, we are not asked to give up our life for Judaism. In previous generations, unfortunately, Jews had to give up their life for Judaism. So in 2022, how do we experience giving up our life for Judaism? And Hasidic thought says that when there is a mitzvah that is very, very difficult for us, or not in our nature, or a mitzvah that we've never done before, and we feel intimidated almost before we do it, but we take a moment and we say, I'm doing this for God. I am doing something that is called in Hebrew Mesirat Nefesh. I'm giving up my life, but not physically. I am giving up something, a part of myself that could be very difficult. I know for a lot of girls, growing up, the idea of being modest, dressing modestly is not something that was very easy with, it's not easy growing up with it. And there are some times where in the morning as a woman, I always had to make decisions of, okay, I don't want to dress modestly today in this regard. Maybe I want to wear a skirt that's a little shorter or whatever it is, but I'm making a small sacrifice for God. I'm doing this for God. I'm not doing this for myself. And there's a lot of different times in our life where we say, I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing this for God. And that is what Avraham did. And that is the challenge that all of us face. But within doing that, we create a partnership and we create a relationship and a conversation with God, which is very, very important. It's not that we're just keeping the mitzvot and we're saying, okay, we'll just do whatever God says. We acknowledge that there is a struggle within doing what God says, but we approach it in a way of our relationship, in a way of conversation with God. And that's what Avraham did. And all of these things we learn from Avraham. We learn that there are many, many challenges in our life, and these challenges are in the way from us getting from point A to point B. But we think about our father Avraham and we say, we know that we can do it. We know that we have the fortitude, we have the ability, we have that God believes in us. That's the main thing, that God chose Avraham to be the father of the Jewish nation because of all the strengths that Avraham had. And these strengths trickle down to us. The abilities of our parents and our grandparents are even genetically, today we know that they're even genetically imprinted in us. We have certain traits that our fathers and forefathers have. And it's very empowering to know that even though it's many, many, many generations back, the Jewish people are a very unique nation. And we joke about it all the time, how there's certain Jewish traits or there's things that Jews do, or a Yiddish cup. These are all being passed down to us, but they all started somewhere. They all started from our father, Avraham. And going back to the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, when the Mishnah says that there are 10 challenges, 10 tests that Avraham was given, all of the challenges that he was given were in order for him to prove that he loved God, prove that he was willing and able to be the father of the Jewish nation. And it brought out new potential within Avraham. And same thing with us. All of the challenges that we confront in life bring out new abilities, new potential, and they allow us to really shine and blossom. So that's what the Mishnah speaks about on a deeper level, that there are many, many challenges that, just like Avraham, we experience in our life, that at the end, when we come to the other side, we're coming to the other side showing that we love God, showing that we are capable of so much more than we even know. There's a quote by Shlomo Carlebach that Shlomo Carlebach would bless people by saying that, I bless you that your dreams of yourself should come true and that God's dreams of you should come true. Because just like we have dreams for ourselves, God, our Father, has dreams for us. He knows that we could accomplish an infinite amount. So that is the Mishnah. And yeah, may we all merit and be able to have the strength to overcome any sort of challenge in our life, however nuanced it is, and to be like Avraham and to draw strength from the story of Avraham. With that, okay, and with that, I would love to open up the floor to anyone who would have either has a question or a comment, and I'd love to hear from the audience. Okay. Thank you everyone so much for joining. And I hope everyone will have a beautiful Shabbos and an amazing week ahead. And yeah, all the best. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.